Why are Israel and Iran fighting, and are we headed closer to the possibility of a full-scale war in the region? That's the question we're going to answer in this video, and we'll break it down in simple terms as to what the conflict is about, what the likely outcomes are, and how dangerous it's going to possibly be. Now, before I go further, I want to remind you that do click on our membership and support us financially in any way you can, because it helps us deliver better news for you. As we have a small team that's putting the news together both on Instagram and on YouTube, and we're working very hard to be able to do a very credible job. Any support that you can give us financially will help us do our job better. Now back to the news. You'll remember starting Friday, Israel attacked Iran in what it called Operation Rising Lion. It targeted its nuclear sites, its missiles, its military infrastructure, and killed some of its senior military officers. Iran retaliated and has threatened Israel with even greater force, and some missiles have actually gone through the Iron Dome, which is Israel's air defense system, and struck buildings in Tel Aviv. Now, as of Tuesday, the tensions continue to escalate between the two countries. President Donald Trump apparently left the G7 in a hurry one day early, rushed back to Washington. He has warned Iranians to evacuate Tehran. Now, Tehran is one of the largest cities in the Middle East. It has 10 million residents, sort of the size of Paris or London, being told to evacuate overnight. So that's caused a lot of panic. Indian nationals in Tehran have been requested to contact the embassy and to move out of the city using their own resources. Students have been moved out, and arrangements have been made by the embassy or the Ministry of External Affairs. If there is an Indian student in Tehran, apparently they're being assisted by our embassy. Now back to why the conflict started. According to Israel, its assault on the military leaders, the nuclear sites, uranium enrichment sites, and ballistic missiles program was necessary to prevent Iran from getting any closer to building an atomic weapon. So that's the crux, really. The idea that there is a possibility that Iran is very close to building its own nuclear weapons, and a large portion of the global community believes that Iran should not have its own nuclear weapons, and that is where these strikes are coming from. The strikes from Israel killed, from last report, 224 people in Iran, and Iran has killed 24 people in Israel, and the back and forth has really put the globe on edge, because this is not a conflict that's good for anyone. Now, what has Israel said its objective is? Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that they're pursuing two objectives. One is that they believe that Iran is nearing technical capability of building a nuclear weapon, and Netanyahu has promised to prevent that using force if necessary. Secondly, they believe that this dramatic escalation will put pressure on Tehran to accept the US's nuclear agreement. Now, that agreement actually has very favorable terms for the US and for Israel, including removal of the enrichment of uranium stockpiles in Iran. Trump has also issued a warning. He's basically said that this is a very volatile moment for the Middle East, but Iran had been given a second chance to avoid further escalation, and there is to do something about it before there is, and I'm quoting, nothing left save what is once known as the Iranian Empire, he has said. He's used his own social media platform, which Trump uses, and he says, and I'm quoting here, "It would be much worse than anything they know, anticipate, or were told, that the United States makes the best, most lethal military equipment anywhere in the world by far, that Israel has a lot more of it, with much more to come, and that they know how to use it." Now, accept it that Donald Trump tends to speak in superlatives all the time, but effectively telling Iran to quickly agree to their terms. Now, we have to pause here to take a look at why these countries believe that Iran is so much closer to developing its nuclear weapons. Let's take a look at what evidence we have so far, right? As of today, in the public domain, Iran does not possess a nuclear weapon. It is not a nuclear weapon state or a nuclear power. But there is other evidence, right? Iran has enriched uranium up to 60% purity, which is very close to the 90% that you need to make in order to have weapons grade material. Now, according to the International Atomic Energy Agency, Iran now has enough highly enriched uranium that, if further enriched, could be used to fuel 2 or 3 nuclear bombs. Now, just to remind you, the International Atomic Energy Agency is the United Nations watchdog on nuclear warheads. Now, this is known as nuclear breakout capacity. So, if Iran hits from 60% to 90%, they will hit that capacity. Also, apparently, it has built what they call centrifuges, which is facilities that can enhance uranium at a much faster pace than earlier models. Now, the real missing link here, they have the uranium, is the weaponization. So, you have the uranium, you have to be able to, very crudely putting it, mount it on a missile and deliver it, right? If you're not able to do that, then there's a portion of this plan that's missing. So that's the portion of the plan that's missing for Iran. The warhead doesn't have warhead design. They have to miniaturize, so make it smaller to fit onto a missile, and they have to have a reliable delivery system, which means it has to fall in the correct place. Now, Iran has ballistic missiles, we understand, which can reach Israel, it can reach Europe, but there is no public evidence of master weaponization of nuclear warheads. And Western intelligence apparently believes that Iran's halted its bomb design back in 2003, but it can resume now if it chooses to. So what is the range of missiles that Iran currently has? Not nuclear, but otherwise, it has a range of over 2,000 kilometers, which means that it could hit Israel, it could hit Gulf states, it could hit southern Europe, as far as southern Europe, with the missiles that it already has. Now, it has the largest missile program in the Middle East, and there's a hypothetical that could be paired with a nuclear warhead at any point. Now, the real trigger has happened because Iran, while it is a signatory to the non-proliferation treaty, which means that it cannot legally develop nukes, it has sort of not been fully open with the International Atomic Agency, energy agency that actually comes in and does inspections in all the countries, which is the UN body. It has not allowed those inspectors to come in and look at its sites. And that lack of transparency has sort of triggered international suspicion, saying what is going on. So, what is the statement that's coming out of Iran? Tehran has continuously said that it is pursuing nuclear technology for peaceful purposes, using it for medicine, for agriculture, for energy, and it has flatly denied any accusation of Western powers that it is developing nuclear weapons. But the fact that it has not allowed inspectors to come in and take a look at their facilities is actually causing stress in most of the world. Now, the United States actually proposed holding talks with Iran earlier this week about that nuclear program as sort of a last-ditch effort from Donald Trump to de-escalate this entire situation. We know Donald Trump likes to de-escalate. According to the report by Axios, the White House has discussed the possibility of a meeting between the US envoy and the Iranian foreign minister. If the meeting goes through, it could actually be a deciding point in this entire conflict. If US has found a way, found a breakthrough, no doubt Donald Trump will announce it before these two countries do. A quick history of how we got to this point, right? Around 2 weeks ago, Iran's supreme leader effectively rejected a US proposal that allows temporary uranium enrichment in the country before ending it completely, forcing the White House to reconsider its approach to the tension. So basically what happened was 2 weeks ago, the US had brought a deal to Iran to basically limit their ability in the future to enrich uranium. Iran rejected that deal. 2 weeks later, Israel struck Iran. So, is there a connection there? According to the BBC, precise details of what was in the deal has not been made public. According to the BBC, precise details of what was in the deal has not been made public. Now, Iran, according to Trump and according to most of the leaders of the Western world, should not be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. So, for example, Trump wrote on his social media, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Everyone should immediately evacuate Tehran, remember? And of course, there was the summit where all of these countries were meeting, and they have put out a collective statement which says, we, the leaders of the G7, reiterate our commitment to peace. We affirm Israel has a right to defend itself. We affirm the protection of civilians. Iran is the principal source of regional instability and terror, and we have consistently clearly said that Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. Now, who have signed this? The British Prime Minister, French President, Italian Premier, German Chancellor, who were at the G7. Now, the quick question to ask at this point is, does Israel have a nuclear weapon? Now, in public domain again, there are 9 countries in the world that possess nuclear weapons. The first, of course, is US, which has the largest stockpile, Russia, France, China, the UK, India, Pakistan, Israel, and North Korea. Israel has never acknowledged or officially denied the existence of its nuclear arsenal, but according to Arms Control Center, which is a non-partisan study, it estimates that they have a stockpile of about 90 nuclear weapons in Israel. So Israel has nuclear weapons, but the Western world seems to be in agreement and consensus that Iran should not be allowed one. What is the response? Of course, it's not just the supreme leader of Iran and his establishment, but also they have proxy players in the neighborhood. Now, who are the proxy players that Iran normally supports, that it would expect to play on its behalf in this conflict? Terror proxies, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in the Gaza Strip, the Shiite militia in Syria and Iraq, and the Houthis in Yemen. These are normally associates or allies of Iran. Now, based on some of the research that's coming out, and of course we know this for sure, Hezbollah has been badly, downgraded. It does not have the kind of power that it used to have. We know what has happened to Hamas in Gaza, and of course the Bashar al-Assad's regime is gone in Syria. The Houthis will retain some capability to strike Israel, but it's not a massive threat right now. So Iran's proxies are also not as strong as it used to be, so they're actually a shell of their former self. So it's a little isolated in its neighborhood also. The real question here is, of course, US's involvement. Now, Trump has repeatedly, and Donald Trump's establishment has repeatedly denied that US had anything to do or any involvement with Israel's strike on Iran. In fact, 4 days after the strike, after Israel had done considerable damage, of course, Israel is now looking to Trump for some sort of involvement or stepping in. But a deepening American involvement will actually, on the Israeli front, provide them with bunker busting bombs to penetrate Iran's nuclear sites, which are deep underground, which Israel does not have the ability to reach right now, but US does. So there are some uranium sites, there are some nuclear sites within Iran that are so deep underground that you need what is called a bunker busting bomb to actually go in, which is a very, apparently 30,000 pounds it weighs, and it uses its own weight and its capacity to burrow into the ground and to explode. The question is this something Trump would be open to do? Now, also, I want to remind you that Trump has sought to, in the last 2 weeks and in the last 1 week, restrain Netanyahu. There was one report that said that he rejected a plan that was brought to him by Israel to assassinate the supreme leader of Iran. But if we look at what's happening in the US, Trump had always promised his MAGA constituency, which are the people who vote for him, the Make America Great Again people, that he will not drag America into another war in the Middle East. But at the same time, there is a lot of support for Israel and, within America. So he's actually having to balance these two things. For all of the denials that US has put out saying that they're not involved in this conflict so far, Iran believes that American forces endorsed or at least supported Israel's attacks so far. So Iran, there is a possibility that it could strike US targets across the Middle East, such as special force camps in Iraq. Remember, they have they have American military established bases there in the Gulf. There are diplomatic missions all over the region. They have embassies all over the region. Iran's proxy forces of Hamas, Hezbollah, they might be diminished, but they still have the ability to do some damage. Remember, I also want to point out when these strikes actually happened, the US withdrew some of its personnel from the region. So what would happen if an American citizen was injured or was killed in any of these places? Would Donald Trump then be forced to step in, and how would he manage his sort of local constituencies and the gallery that he normally plays to when he has to make that decision? Now, the other possibility is the possibility of dragging in the Gulf countries. Now, Iran has failed to damage Israel's well-protected military and other targets, but is there a possibility that it will hit some of the other softer targets in the Gulf? Remember, in the past, Iran has been accused of hitting Saudi Arabia's oil fields and also targeting the UAE back in 2022 through the Houthi proxies. So is that something they would do again? Remember, there are air bases in several of these places, and what will America do if something like that comes up one more time? The other possibility that we must talk about is what happens if Israel is unable to destroy Iran's nuclear facilities. Remember, what if there is 400 kgs of 60% enriched uranium? Does this actually push them over the edge to speed up their process and to sort of buckle down and say, we're going to finish what we started in terms of building that nuclear weapon, because now we have reason to believe that we're going to need it. So there are several things that could play out from where it is right now. And this entire conflict is nowhere near resolving itself. People from all over the world are watching it because it's a really, it has the ability to escalate very sharply. So we know that from several reports in the media that Iran has apparently backroom reached out to the US saying they want Israel to stop. It's in everybody's interest to stop. So one of them is going to have to seize and stop those airstrikes. Is that going to happen? Or if they are not able to stop at this point, will Iran actually push the US into stepping in, and that will really escalate the entire issue? So that's something that needs to be watched out. So you know the reasons why the conflict have happened is Iran's nuclear program, which Iran continues to dismiss or deny. But we'll have to see how much further Israel wants to take this. So is it going to be one of those situations where the US manages to negotiate a ceasefire, and both countries will then claim victory on their own terms? We're going to see how that plays out. Leave me a comment in the comment section on any questions you want to be answered about this conflict, or what you think is really going on as far as this conflict is concerned. And remember, like, share, subscribe to our video. Thank you for watching.